This afternoon, Prime Minister Modi addressed his first rally in Srinagar. This was his opportunity to reach out to Kashmiri Muslims. What sort of message did he send? And did he live up to Mr. Vajpayee's speech of 2003, which he has often said he wishes to emulate? With me to answer those questions is BJP spokesperson Nalin Kohli, Congress MP and spokesperson Abhishek Singhvi, the well-known Kashmiri academic and former Vice-Chancellor Siddique Wahid, and joining us from Srinagar, the editor of Rising Kashmir, Sujat Bukhari. Professor Wahid, the Prime Minister began by promising that it was his responsibility to take further and to fulfill what he called Atal Bihari Vajpayee's dream, which he identified as the promise of Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat and Jamhuriyat. How will that go down with the audience?
I don't know how it will go down. I think that largely there's a question of the mood of the speech as a whole, and I felt that the mood of the speech was more an election stump speech rather than anything new that there was to offer.
So in other words, this emulation of Prime Minister Vajpayee's message may not actually strike the chord he hopes it will.
No, I don't think so. And I think it has to do with the baggage that he brings, rightly or wrongly.
His own background.
His own background, yes.
Sujat Bukhari, something the Prime Minister didn't do was to elaborate on what he means by Insaniyat, nor did he say how he would further Kashmiriyat. Was that absence of detail noted by people?
Yes, Karan, that was completely absent from his speech. In fact, Vajpayee, when he came here on 18th of April 2003, and he spoke to the people from the same podium where from Mr. Modi was addressing the people today, he had surprised everyone by extending a fresh hand of friendship to Pakistan in the backdrop of the hostilities that had built up in wake of December 2001 Parliament attack. So today Modi's speech was more towards development and progress and luring youth, but it was the political content in Modi's speech was missing, except for a passing reference he made to Vajpayee's idea of Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat and Insaniyat.
So are you, like Professor Wahid in studio in Delhi, also saying that this emulation of Mr. Vajpayee will not have struck the chord with the Kashmiri people that Mr. Modi hopes it might? Are you in agreement with Professor Wahid?
Yeah, I do agree with him. I think it did not strike a chord because, I mean, as many elections you would hold, as much of turnout you would see on the ground in Kashmir. I mean, without denying that fact, I think it's more about the politics, it's more about the political nature of the Kashmir problem that needs to be addressed. And that's how I think Vajpayee stood alone, not only among the BJP leadership, but also among all the prime ministers India has seen so far. So I think it's the best opportunity for a prime minister like Narendra Modi to emulate Vajpayee in letter and spirit. But in his 6 or 8 months of tenure as Prime Minister, he has not touched that path.
What you're hearing, Nalin Kohli, is two prominent thinking Kashmiris who reflect on what Mr. Modi said. And Mr. Modi's attempt to emulate Mr. Vajpayee, for them, hasn't succeeded. He hasn't been able to give the same sincerity to that message. He may have echoed the former Prime Minister's words, but he hasn't convinced the audience. How do you respond to that?
Well, I must say it's fascinating that you even would attempt to say that Mr. Modi is trying to emulate Mr. Vajpayee. Policy within the BJP or thoughts about the BJP is there, but every leader is entitled to project himself or keep his priorities in the manner that he would deem it fit. We are not in a copycat kind of a mode. That was a good message of Mr. Vajpayee, which we are proud of, the nation is proud of, Kashmiris remember it. And if the Prime Minister today is repeating it, it's heartening. I don't think I remember hearing the Prime Minister over a decade, Dr. Manmohan Singh, ever taking this positive message further.
But this is not about Dr. Manmohan Singh, so let's not make it party political.
No, I'm not. I'm just simply saying a good message is not to do only about the BJP or the Congress. It's for the nation. Number two, in regard to the two, both Mr. Bukhari as well as Mr. Wahid, Professor Wahid, Whether it touches the chords of the Kashmiri people or not, let's leave that for eventually the Kashmiri people to say. They will assess it, but I will not agree with one point, which is that this could not have been a policy statement. It is, after all, an election speech. If he goes with a policy statement, there is going to be a risk that the Election Commission will rightfully step in. With regard to speaking about development and looking at the youth, that's about aspirations.
Well,
Has there been governance?
Let's take the points
so I think
one by
he's
one.
in his rights to speak on that.
Okay. Abhishek Singhvi, a second theme which featured very strongly in the Prime Minister's speech was his emotional appeal. He said, your pain is mine, your sorrow is mine, your troubles are mine. Later he said, I promise to pull you out of the bad days you're experiencing since the flood. At another point he said, I will make your dreams my dream. Do you think this sort of emotion will strike a chord, or do you think people, given Mr. Modi's background, will remain skeptical and suspicious? How will they respond to the emotion?
The specific answer to your specific question is the latter. It will not be believed, it will have skepticism. You know very well, Karan, that we have a Prime Minister who is high on oratory, very, very vacuous and empty on details. That's the crux of the problem. This is a speech high on rhetoric as usual, high on adjectives as usual. But words, emotions, insaniyat, jamhuriyat, adjectives do not deliver on the ground. From 2004 to 2014, never has Jammu and Kashmir in the past, even in Congress governments, seen the kind of investment and money. The Rohtang tunnel, the Uri project.
Let's not go back into what Congress did. Stick to Mr. Modi's speech.
I'm not on that. No, I'm sticking to it. I'm saying there is not a single specific takeaway. I'm not going into the details. I'm giving you an example. There is not a single specific takeaway like decrease in terrorism in 10 years of UPA rule. Decrease.
Yeah. You're saying to me that the emotion
like the double speak and the double
convincing.
voice on 370. No, because just see, in Jammu, he says 370 is a major issue, not he, I mean the BJP. In Srinagar, it's just kind of fudged. Okay. On FSPA, in the opposition, he says something,
Abhishek
when in power he says something.
Let's take one issue at a time. Let's not bring all the issues in together.
Sincerity quotient missing. Yes.
I want to stick to the emotion for a while, because that's the second big theme. I'll come to all the other issues the Prime Minister mentioned in a moment's time. In this context, one of the odd things the Prime Minister said was this: "Aapne mujhe jo pyar diya hai, main kabhi nahi bhul sakta." What great love have the people of the valley given him? And by claiming they have, is he going to leave them somewhat perplexed about what he's talking about?
I think so. I mean, I think I was very confused by that statement as well, and I saw it on the ticker tape, not really heard him say it, and I was puzzled by that statement. And I think, you know, the credibility of the emotion, I think, is brought home by the fact that, you know, he really doesn't seem to be on the ground. For example, he talked very lovingly about Kashmiri students maybe going to Rajasthan for some reason, and then Rajasthani students coming to Kashmir, and how that would be so wonderful. And this is a day after, I think, 9 or 10 students have been beaten by iron rods, Kashmiri students, in Haryana. I mean, and you know, where's the connect here? And why isn't there a response to that, rather than talking somewhat in the abstract?
So you're saying that these emotional strands in his speech, and they were quite a dominant second theme, will not strike a chord again?
I don't think they will.
So once again, he was talking to an audience that was hearing him, but clearly not going to respond to him.
Yes, and I think it was very clear from the images you saw as well. I mean, the audience was laid back.
They were indeed. They were indeed. One of the things that the speech was very strong on, Sujat, and in a sense, I suppose that is the third big theme in Mr. Modi's speech, was development. He spoke about jobs, employment, electricity, opening up small factories, karkhanas as he called them, education. Now, development is certainly something the people of Kashmir yearn for. Will they be more responsive to this aspect of the speech?
Karan, before I answer your question, I have to make 2 quick points. I mean, one was that when he talked about "you have showered love on me," but was he knowing that entire Srinagar city was locked by the police and authorities today, and there was a curfew-like situation in Srinagar? Not a single soul was being allowed to move on the streets. That's number one. And number two, I just want to make, I don't know why he has been given wrong information, that Mr. Modi said that this is the first rally after 30 years in Sher-e-Kashmir Stadium. But he forgets that his Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Vajpayee addressed more than 20,000 people on 18th April, number one. And on 26th of June, Chief Minister Umar Abdullah was coronated as the new Chief of National Conference on the same stage in the same grounds on 26th of June 2000. Sure. So I think that needs to be corrected. And as far as your question is concerned, I think, yes, people do want jobs, people do want employment and all that. But as I said earlier, I think, I mean, that needs to be seen, that how much and how many jobs the government will give. I mean, till today, as Mr. Modi himself mentioned, that he has given 1,100 crores and then 1,000 crores, but no check of relief and has come to the people who were actually who are the victims of flood. I don't know. I mean, if this is the system, and if this is the time gap for reaching out to the people with development and jobs and all that, I don't think it's going to strike a chord.
Nalin Kohli, I suppose in a sense I want to take up with you the point Professor Wahid made, which is the way the audience were responding to the speech. They didn't look and sound very responsive. They listened in silence. There was very little cheering. The audience in Srinagar was very different to the sort of audiences we see at Mr. Modi's usual rallies, which are almost ecstatic. This was almost a quiet, perhaps at times unresponsive, maybe even on occasion slightly sullen audience. How do you respond to that?
Three things. First of all, there was this level of confusion about why the Prime Minister said showered love. Actually, if you just go back to the Lok Sabha results, 32% of the vote of Jammu and Kashmir went to the BJP, which was the highest. And at the lowest was the National Conference at 10%. Now, from a political perspective, people shower their love in elections through votes. That's how you acknowledge it. So I didn't see anything. It was very difficult to arrive at a conclusion. However, we'll leave that to each one's own assessment powers. Second is, let's go back to relief distribution. Anyone on this panel would say that if we distribute, the government of India sends a single check out at the moment, any check.
What about my question? You're very good at showering with me details that are irrelevant to the question. What about the sullen, quiet, unresponsive nature of the audience?
No, I disagree. And I take offense. I take offense to say irrelevant. These were comments on your show, not on another show. So I'm answering them before I come to your question. Okay. So as I was saying, you can't distribute funds because it comes under the Election Commission.
Come to my question.
Would you like to repeat it now?
Oh, so you've forgotten it. I said the audience listened to the Prime Minister in silence. There was very little cheering. They looked and sounded unresponsive. How do you respond to that?
Fair enough. We will know eventually. We'll only wait for the election results. That the Prime Minister of India, after there is an attempt to thwart the election process, repeated terrorist attacks, chooses to go still ahead, despite some may say that he shouldn't have because there is a terrorist threat. That, of course, is not a matter of any appreciation. What would be is an assessment of what is the possible outcome without the outcome coming.
You're not answering my question. I'll simply note that for the audience a second time. I want to raise with you, Abhishek Singhvi, something the Prime Minister said, which a moment ago we heard from Colonel Ajay Shukla, has worried junior officers in the Valley, may well have worried senior officers as well. It's when the Prime Minister claimed that he personally took the credit for making the army accept that what happened on November the 3rd in Anantnag, when 2 Kashmiri boys were mistakenly killed, was a mistake. And the Prime Minister went on to say that never before has the army made this sort of acceptance of a mistake, thus suggesting, by implication, that there had been many such earlier mistakes, what people sometimes call human rights violations, and the army has never owned up to them. That has not sent a very good message, so Colonel Shukla told us a moment ago, to senior and junior officers who've been complaining to him. How do you, as the Congress spokesperson, respond to that part of the Prime Minister's speech?
2 or 3 responses. First, factually incorrect. On all major incidents where there is any credible evidence, in the past many times, the army has acquitted itself honorably by instituting proper inquiries and punishing people. So it's ridiculous to suggest that this is the first time since May 2014 that a BJP government is taken over, and because of Mr. Modi there is an admission. There have been so many chastisements, suspensions, dismissals, court-martials. Number two, I think it sends a wrong message, having made the point earlier, and the defense minister having made the point, the then defense minister, for the prime minister on a visit, on an electoral speech, to kind of rub it in. It is not supposed to do any great things for the morale of the army if you rub something in. It's a process of inquiry. Nobody supports human rights violations, and the army should be congratulated for having done something, but not rubbed it in. And last but not the least, I think it's very important that when you talk of AFSPA, which is related to the army, you're speaking in a double voice. The BJP statements when it was in opposition and now are totally, no, I'm just saying related to the army. So the army is dispirited.
We're not talking about AFSPA. Let's not go on to AFSPA. That's a different subject altogether. How do you think the Kashmiri audience would have responded to that particular bit of Mr. Modi when, with almost evident pride, he said that he was the one who had got the army to accept it was a mistake. This had never happened before. Will it convince his audience that he is a new and different type of prime minister?
Well, you know, I'd like to respond to that in a slightly different way. Is that a few months ago, the Prime Minister, I think speaking, or not a few months ago, not very long ago, speaking in New York, sort of chuckled at the fact that it made headline news that bureaucrats were coming on time and that he had caused it. In other words, I mean, he was amused by it, even a little bit sarcastic in his remark. And today you have an error that was committed by the army in the case of, in this case, and the army admitting it. I don't know whether it was the first time or has been done many times. And the leader of the largest democracy in the world taking credit for it as if it was some big deal. I mean, if an error is admitted, I think we should all say good and move on. You know, with it.
So the element of what I call showing offness would not impress the Kashmiris at all?
No, I don't think so.
They won't give Mr. Modi credit for this?
No.
Now, let me go back to you. I want to put to you not a question that makes you defensive and ask you how you respond to the fact that this bit has not impressed the Kashmiri people. I want to put this to you. There was a very important part of Mr. Modi's speech when he said, speaking in a very emotional, personal way, I want to serve you. Please give me the chance to serve. That's the sort of thing he often says in his speeches, and it gets a huge ecstatic round of response elsewhere. Here, it got probably no response at all. There was very little cheering. Does that suggest that there's a big gap between Mr. Modi and the Kashmiri Muslim audience in Srinagar, unlike the situation in Jammu, Udhampur or Samba?
Well, fair enough. If there are fault lines in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the credit or the discredit of that will go for those who have governed it. There should be no fault lines within a state so dramatic that you should be able to see such, as you are putting it, difference in the way people react to how the Prime Minister speaks. So therefore, as I said right at the beginning, we have to leave it to the wisdom of the people, how they would like to vote. And for me, it doesn't matter where the vote goes. The fact that 72% people are choosing to vote, that is celebration itself. We can quibble and quabble who's getting the vote. End of the day, someone is going to get it. If not the BJP, the Congress, the NC, the PDP. But each one of us is entitled to work for that vote.
My last
point is that, just a last quick comment, that it doesn't matter for whatever assessments are done. There was a series of assessments done on Mr. Modi for a decade. He is the Prime Minister of India.
All right. Very quickly, literally with a yes or no, because we're out of time. Are you happy with this speech and are you happy with the way it went down? A quick yes or no.
Well, certainly. I think I would say his being there is a matter of celebration. Kashmiris voting is a matter of even greater celebration.
All right.
And I think that is what has to be celebrated. The rest is politics.
We will continue to celebrate democracy because that is, of course, the very core of our political system. My thanks to all of my four guests for coming and joining me. I'm out of time, Sujat. I'm sorry I can't come back to you. I really do apologize. My apologies for that. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.